I would recommend that they write everything out, everything down to the detail. I think we mentioned that a little earlier. All the details. If you don't know, if you don't know what you want for real, then you can't achieve it. So usually, whatever your vision is, it's a huge vision, but it needs to be broken down into bacon bits. And you need, and I'll say this again, you have to understand that it's a process, and even short or long, it's a process. So you got to understand that if it's a process, you got to be working every day. I don't care if you work 12-hour days before or after work, even during work. You need to be doing whatever it takes, whatever you can do with the time that you have. Your time is essential. You have to respect time, and you have to know it's going to pass whether you're doing these things or not. So those days you're laying in that bed and you could be writing, or you could be emailing, or you could be calling, or you could be knocking on doors, or you could be introducing yourself, or you could be in the coffee shop and making sure anybody that come in that door, maybe you have to be willing to do what the average person is unwilling to do. If you want to be extraordinary, if you want to be exceptional, this takes superhuman work ethic.
Juelz, welcome to the Book Thinkers Life Changing Books podcast. It's so fitting because your life transformed because of words and led you to writing two books of poetry, which is amazing. You were on a path of drugs, in and out of jail, and your story could have turned out just like so differently. I'd love to start with you sharing a poem, if you're okay with it, and then I have a bunch of follow-up questions.
Okay. I'd like to share a poem from my first book, In My Eyes One. It's titled My Society, and it kind of gives you a better insight on the direction that my poetry can bring you. So it goes like this. In my society, there's choices of destruction and variety. I always felt like the rules never applied to me. In my society, the path to success is rarely taken, and the young boys lose their fathers and they feel forsaken. In my society, precious young girls evolve to whores, and all we see is closed doors because the open is crowded. In my society, some days I ask God how he could allow this. But I guess he wouldn't give us one thing that we couldn't handle, caught up in our lifestyles in the midst of a scandal. In my society, it isn't safe to walk the streets. There's robbers, there's thieves, the underachieved. And money's the only subject. People's eyes filled with greed in my society.
Man, got chills.
That's from In My Eyes One.
Beautiful.
The one that started it all, so I feel like it's fitting to kick it off with that poem. It's my signature poem. I perform it everywhere I go.
That's amazing. Well, it's an incredible one. It tells such a powerful story. So, what I'd love to ask about it is, what was the moment that you realized the path that you were going down wasn't for you? Like, when did you wake up?
Okay, that's a good question. I believe that I became conscious of what I wanted to do back in, I'd say 2009, 2010. Um, before I put the work out, but I had this urge uh, to get what was inside of me out. So the only way I've ever been good at communicating is through my writing. And I wouldn't say I stumbled on poetry myself, but growing up, I had a couple of mentors. I'll say like my brothers and a couple of guys that are friends that were into hip hop rap. So that's the path that I initially got the bug from. But to take it a little deeper, when I was younger, my father was incarcerated. My brother was incarcerated at some point, and the way that we communicated most was through writing, because I was born, I was living in poverty myself. We couldn't afford those collect calls like that, so writing was the most efficient way to communicate. So with my dad, it was straight up. I was a kid, so it was straight up writing, back and forth, getting to know each other through that connection. And through my brother, we were a little bit more close because he actually, was with me side by side growing up for the most part. So when he got locked up, that kind of hurt me. and he would write me letters. And like I said, I looked up to him. His letters were like in the form of advice. And at the time, I didn't realize that while he was giving me this advice, he was rhyming. And I would say I caught the bug then, but later on, I picked it back up through life. And I ended up taking it on to be a full-time career.
It's such an inspiring story. Do you feel like you were able to get close to your dad through the medium of writing?
As a child, yes. If
Yeah.
I'm speaking for childhood Jews, yes, uh, it was successful as far as it was something. It's a different way to be raised by your father. I'll say that.
Mm,
So I got to know things about him through the writing. I got my not punishment, but like my scolding through the writing, my advice through the writing. So that's why writing is so deep to me, is because it was like my first form of communication. It was important because as you know, I don't know what your relationship is with your parents, but a father is pretty important to a boy. And anything that they have to say is like it's like a lion's roar to a little. I'm a cub, he's a
mm,
lion. So no
yeah.
matter if it's through writing, through the phone, whatever, his presence was felt through the writing. So I would say, um, yeah, I would say
Mm.
yes to that question as far as
I find it like so fascinating that you're able to still cultivate a relationship with your dad. This is getting a little vulnerable on my side. I had a and my dad might disagree if he listens to this or he listened to this but I had a rough relationship with my father. I didn't ever feel very connected to him. So
mhm.
when I hear that, oh, we were able to connect through writing, that sounds really impressive to somebody like me. Like that's super powerful. Do you feel like you kept that up as, I mean, you said you felt his presence. Do you feel like his presence stayed around as you grew up, or do you feel like that you had to distance yourself from that?
That's a good question. Um, Unfortunately, we don't have the best relationship. I
Mm,
won't. We don't really have a relationship as adults.
mm,
And there's multiple reasons for that. I don't have any ill will to my father.
yeah.
I understand that there's a bigger picture involved with the system that some of us are born into. So at first, as a child, or as a youth, I was a little bit angry. After when I first started writing my dad, I was infatuated with him. I was infatuated
Mm,
with my father. But as I grew and I noticed around me that other kids didn't, they had their father. And the way I knew is because sports events, just things that a father would show up for,
mm,
birthdays, everything's missed. And, after a while, mail and phone calls, they just don't replace the physical form. So, um, as an adult, we didn't. I guess we didn't get keep the connection, I will say that he's given me a piece of him inside. I mean,
mm,
uh, we all get, whether you love, hate, whatever your relationship is with your parents, we all get something from them, whether we like it or not. So I'm never upset with my father. I wish that we did have a better relationship as adults, and it's not over yet. But everybody's growth is different. So maybe one day we'll align, um, and we'll be able to sit down like men and hash out our little differences.
mm.
A lot's happened since I started. We pen pal to
Oh yeah,
adulthood. A lot's happened, so
yeah.
it'd be hard to compress that into this time.
Oh yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
But
Well,
I
I
definitely love my father though, for giving me life, if nothing else, and at least he gave me some good looks. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm
There we
joking.
go. Oh, I love it. No, you're right. It's true. Oh
Yeah,
man, I have so much gratitude for that, and feel the same about my dad. There's so much love there, and those relationships are always complicated anyway. It seems like
yeah,
even the people that I saw growing up who had the seemingly perfect relationship with their parents still had a lot of different struggles and everything else. So it's like this natural progression of growing up, I
hmm
suppose. So
yeah.
now you're leading workshops, you're doing this for a living, which just walk me through how that came about. Like, how did you go from, okay, I'm writing some poetry, to book, and then now I'm leading workshops and changing people's lives through words?
That's a good question as well. How did that come about? Um, I'll say everything I've done is unconventional. First of all, I didn't plan on doing anything that I'm doing now, but I did I did have a vision to get as far away from my situations at the time, my environment, not get away from it, but just change the trajectory.
Mm,
So I didn't feel like I had much time left, to be honest. I did have a near death experience through through my street experiences, and that wasn't the reason that I ended up uh, publishing or anything, but it was one of the many reasons.
mm,
Um, I just started looking at life differently at some point. I ended up back on my childhood street, Vernon Street. It's a one-way street, and I just remember sitting out on the steps and just, looking around. I was living a different life than I'm living now, obviously.
mm.
So I'm comfortable, but I'm uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. I'm uncomfortable
Yes.
looking at the youth where I was, and then looking at uh, the guys and the females that were older than me, I would say,
Mm,
and seeing where they're at. Um, and I just said to myself, I said, I want to change this, and if for nothing else, for my children, for my family, I want to try to do something. Take a chance. So what
mm,
I did was I banked on myself. All of my work is self-published. I put everything out myself. I never wait for anybody. I don't wait for the okay. It was just an urge, and I said I didn't feel like I felt like if I spent another summer this way, I probably wouldn't be here. So, and that's just in all honesty, and that's a lot for a lot of people where I come from, and all over the United States and the world for that matter. But I felt that urgency and acted on it. So I said, well, if I do die and something does happen to me tragically before my time, I want my children to know who I was as a person, not the stories they hear from others that may not be have a favorable memory of me, but
mm,
who I truly am and not who I had to be. And I did that through my poetry. That's why I'm so open with sharing it. So I would say it started, um, as just an idea. It was this. I started writing in my notepad, sitting on the same steps, I hustled from. And but I just decided to just cold turkey stop. I said, I'm going to change this. I started writing. I started gathering poems from when I was incarcerated. Whatever I could salvage that made sense for the project I wanted to put out. I knew the name that I wanted to call the series "In My Eyes" because I'm a
mm,
big Tupac fan, so I'm inspired by his work, and never biting, but he inspired me. So a lot of if you listen or read my work and listen to some of the poems, you could hear it in it inside of the work. So I started out. I'm not going to drag this out. Started out with "In My Eyes" one. I went around telling everybody I'm going to do this. Now everybody knows me for one thing, for hustling, maybe, and now I'm running around talking about, hey, I'm about to release this poetry book, da 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 da. I'm running around putting up posters, I'm putting up flyers. I'm talking about everywhere. I'm jumping out on people from out of my car. I'm telling them what's going to go down. Like I was a politician, basically. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, I ran into the he became mayor, hopped out on any of those politicians. I think it was around election season it came out. And I'm just like, hey, I'm Jews. Y'all need to know who I am. Da 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 da. And I just once I got the seed planted, I just didn't stop. So then I got my books printed up, and I ended up in the front page of the newspaper. Um, and then the story was born,
mm.
so to
Now,
speak.
yeah, man, it's and again, it's such an inspiring story. I'm curious, like you you came up to a lot of adversity. Like I've read a few articles and everything else, and you came up to a bunch of adversity along the way. Like maybe people not accepting this new version of you, maybe people
Mhm.
saying like, "Oh, but you're a criminal," or whatever it is,
Yeah.
the labels that they put on you. So, what are some of the things you've done to help yourself almost overcome that reputation?
I didn't hide from it.
Mm,
I accept who I am. We're not all born with things given. We're not all born with things in place. The way that I look at my life is from my own eyes. It's easy for people to judge. It's easy for me to judge anybody, but When we take the time and we actually look at the person for the person, then you can understand that life can sculpt us into things. So I was born into a situation where I was just raised by my mother. So um, very hard headed, very driven. When I get a thought, I've been doing this since I was a kid. Um, Nobody can tell me anything. So I was okay with people judging me. And that's part of my brand, actually, is that you can take nothing and turn it into something. And but most importantly, it's a huge process. The same way you were sculpted from the day you were born is the same way you're sculpted when you start your vision, your process, your journey. And now, I've become, never, I evolved. I've never changed. And I like to say that a lot. I never changed. I'm Jules. You know what I mean? And because of this Jules, you have this Jules. Because of the decisions he made, um, I'm making better decisions now, and I'm still learning. So when people try to categorize me and put me into a box, I allow them to do it so they can see that a box could never contain
Man, so many powerful words. Oh,
me.
it's beautiful. I was before this call I was talking to a friend. It's like this synchronicity stuff, man. I love it. It's the looking at somebody with no judgment. It's so hard for people to do. And I look at that and I'm like, you're just doing yourself a disservice. Like, if you hate somebody else for whatever, like the color of their skin, for their past, for whatever they've done, like if you're hating them for that thing, all you're doing is putting negative energy all over yourself, and you're just harming yourself in the long run. And
Yes, sir.
I love that you're so willing to be yourself, because so many people struggle with that. And that message is just, I think, so important to say. And I'm so inspired. I know I keep saying inspired, but I truly am. I'm just
That's what it's
inspired
about.
by listening to you talk and hearing you and seeing where you came from. And you're able to look at your life and be like, hey, yeah, I'm very grateful for the past, but I also see the possibility of the future. And I'm grateful for the present, which is an incredible place to be. Now, let's talk a little bit about the power of words. Like, what why words? Why do you think words are so important? Why, I mean, like, let's just unpack the power of words.
Well,
Because I
unpack the
think
power
that's,
word.
yeah, I think that, like, you understand this, like, you're through your poetry, you're able to you're able to convey messages that can transcend race, transcend gender, transcend age. And it's incredible. It's like, I read one of your poems, I marked it here. It's I Sit Alone,
Oh,
and
that's
it's
one of my favorites.
in my eyes too. Like, man, I felt that to my core. And maybe, is it okay if I read it on here?
That's fine.
All right, I'm gonna go for it then. It's okay.
Okay.
I Sit Alone. Do you want to read it? Do you want to read it? You
Well,
perform
I
it. You
mean,
know
if
it.
you want to read it, that's awesome. I can
I
also
was
read
just
it.
I was just pumped. You read it. You read it.
All right, I'll read it. I'll read it. Hold on one second, sir. That's one of my favorites, by the way. So I'm really
Woo!
happy to hear that it resonated.
It did, in a big way.
Seriously. Hold on. Give me a second. What page do you have?
Oh, hold on. I put it. I have it
I
marked
might
here.
get
Hang
it
on.
before you, but I just want to say,
37.
okay, I'm way too far. I Sit Alone. It's actually one of my favorites, and I am me too.
I'm sitting here today with Ken Rusk, who has done hundreds of millions of dollars in business. He's also sold tens of thousands of books and changed countless lives. We're sitting here today because he is sponsoring today's episode. So Ken, tell everybody about your course.
Well, thank you. I built a course called The Path to a Successful Life. It's designed around trying to get somebody unstuck. Sometimes you're feeling like you're kind of stuck in where you are and you're not really sure what you want your life to look like or how to go about getting it. Well, for the cost of about dinner and a movie and maybe the time you spend on a weekend, you can exactly what you want your future to look like and how to go about getting it.
You know the power of vision. That's why you watch podcasts like this. So click the link below, get signed up, and let me know what your experience is like.
Alone in the bathroom. Is that a silly place to think? Ashtray full of ashes. Few sips left to drink. Behind this door seems my only place of peace. I created my present from decisions of before. I'm desperate for change. I aspire to much more. Plagued by pain, but still I remain. As I grow, few friends remain. I'd like to think I have stayed the same, but I changed. A shell of me is what this fellow be. I am not a failure even with a felony. I keep doubt locked in a cell in me. Plus pain is trapped in a gel in me. I lost friends over jealousy? This is what it's become? This is what you're telling me? Smiles harder to come by than frowns. Loyalty lost, nowhere to be found. You might as well close the casket, lower me down. I belong here no more. I belong in the ground. I sit alone.
Man, literally, I
Do
got
you?
goosebumps when I read
I
it the
would like
first
to
time,
ask
and
you a question.
yes.
Do you have a particular line that caught you?
Ooh, I mean, first of all, I will say, like, as I was going through these, the first thing that caught me was "I sit alone." Like every morning, and this is like almost a personal thing, but every morning I get up and I do meditation, and it's like this: I sit alone, right? And so like
Mm-hmm.
I thought that, and then as I was going through this, I was like, man, this is the thing that like just hit me. I created my present from decisions of before. Like, holy smokes, if that doesn't outline, I was like, that just outlines the human condition, right? It's like we have these choices, we make these choices, and yeah, there's a lot of different things that go in that are involved in that, whether it's our upbringing, whether that's like different things that have like maybe pushed us to make those choices, but still we are the ones who make the decision, and where we're at is because of the decisions that we make. And it's so powerful. But the whole thing, man, I love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And I think that that's
absolutely.
so true that the decisions that we make are the life that we were given in the beginning. There's not much you can do about it, but once you're able to make decisions and become conscious, it's up to you to sculpt the life that you want. And some of us don't get that right away. And that's why, I write. I want people like myself, anybody that doesn't get it to be able to capture, because then they're able to evolve and grow. And until you come to that point of understanding how important each decision you make is, it's kind of hard for you to evolve and grow. In my opinion, of course.
I mean, I think your opinion is pretty dead on. So you're also a father. Tell me
Yes.
about that journey, and like what are you teaching your kids? How do they feel? What are their ages? Like how do they feel about you doing poetry, and like what are their thoughts of you?
15-year-old daughter, 13-year-old son, and 7-year-old son.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Um, my daughter was born she was born right before I even started writing, and
Hmm.
my son, my 13-year-old son was like he the what was it? The week before he was born, I released the whole series, Julian Jr. Uh, my son Cairo, he's an artist, and his artwork is actually right back there on the wall.
Oh, I love it.
He's a huge artist. He loves what I do. He doesn't really pay as much. He doesn't understand yet, but he
Yeah,
does
yeah.
know that I do these things. He's always proud of me. Um, have him the most. My daughter, she lives out of state. She lives in Rhode Island. If you did a little history on me, I
Hmm.
have roots in Rhode Island.
Yep.
And my other son's 13. He's really much into video games and things of that nature. He's a smart kid, but he's more like conditioned to the video games. My youngest son's the artist. He wants to be out getting dirty. Um, so I believe they're proud of me. I don't think that they could understand the depths of what I'm trying to do here yet, but
Mm.
I do know that they recognize it in their own way. Um, so I can't speak for them, but I believe that they understand for the most part, but they're kind of really much worried about what's going on in their life, as kids some most of the time will be.
Yeah.
We never look at our parents and be like, oh, I mean, they could, but I think my youngest son, he really doesn't understand. He just sees me doing all these things, and I brought him on. I brought all of them, except for my daughter. I brought both of my sons to different engagements with me. So
Mm.
um, it's always great for them to be involved. This is actually my daughter's eyes on my children's book, and I always try to. I did it for them,
Mm.
So, but I don't think that it'll sink in until they're self adults.
Yeah.
So, um, a vision's a vision, and it's not meant to be seen the same day. So it's just a down the line type of thing. So I write with that in mind. So hope that answered the question as
Yeah,
best
no,
as it
for sure. I'd love to know too, like, what are some of the things that you're trying to do with your kids that maybe you didn't experience? I mean, there was a lot obviously that you didn't experience as a child. So, what are some of the things that you're trying to give to your children that maybe you didn't get as a kid?
Well, I want them to fit a lot of things. Well, just being there for the most part, if you're able to, in whatever capacity you could be there. We're not living in the same world as like the 50s where it's dad, mom, married and everything. I think we can all agree with that. Things are changing. So it's like uh, my kids don't all live with me. So I spend most of my time with my 7-year-old. I spend a lot more time with my 7-year-old. My 13-year-old, when he'll be around on the weekends and things like that. He's 13 though, and my daughter just doesn't live here, so I have to travel. But what I try to instill in them is I want them to be financially literate, something I really wasn't growing up.
Mm.
I want them to uh, know who they are so that they know where they're going. Um, and I want them to know that early, and I try to instill that into them every chance that I get. That you are somebody, you're somebody great, but you have to work on that. You have to work on that every day. You know what I mean? And I just want to be there as much as I can physically because I didn't have that. And I also want them to know, Daddy will always fight for you and be there for you and listen to you. I don't I realize life is about building relationships, even amongst your family. We all have cousins, and then we say we have distant cousins because we don't know them, right? We didn't take the time to build that relationship. So I like if I could pass anything along, it would be something it's a small thing, but building relationships with people and cultivating those relationships honestly, not forcing them. That's something I would like to them to take away from my life and anything that I do. Is it's important? The people around you are super important, just as important as you are.
I love that, man. You're absolutely right. I believe like at the end of the day, it comes down to those relationships that you have and cultivating those things because that's what matters. That's what matters most. Cultivating that love, man. It's what it's all about. So you talk about vision. Like what's your big vision for your life? Like where do you see yourself? I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, like what do you do you want to leave a legacy behind? Just maybe unpack like what you see your life turning into or unfolding to.
Well, what's going to happen is what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to continue putting in all the footwork. My vision's always been to hit the entire world. Okay,
Mm.
I know that sounds crazy, but it's not really that crazy.
Not to me,
So
it doesn't sound crazy.
my vision is there's tons of schools out there, and I think in Pennsylvania there's like 85,000 elementary schools. 85,000. All right, that's in Pennsylvania, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That's
Hmm.
just elementary level. So I'm trying to reach as much youth as possible with the message that I have. But ultimately, I want to be able to cultivate other artists underneath IME, which stands for Inspiration, Motivation, Entertainment, and the name of my
Mm.
company, IME Vision LLC. My goal is to cultivate talent, talented young poets to get their voice heard, teach them that yeah, it's writing, but it's a business as well. I don't want them to just get caught up in entertainment. I want to teach them the game, and I
Mm.
want to um, take that as far as I can. No different than the entertainment industry with rap or hip hop. I want to do it with poetry. I want to create platforms for young artists underneath IME Vision. Hopefully, they branch off on their own, but you got to start somewhere. I put in a lot of work. I'm hoping that my experience and expertise that I've gained and continue to gain is going to be beneficial to young poets, singers, writers, artists, because a lot of us are talented and don't understand the business aspect of this. And when I came into this scene, I'll say, one of the number one things that I would say is, I've seen a lot of people trying and doing what they were doing, and they're great at it, but they weren't getting that respect I felt like they deserve because they're not pressing the issue. And one thing that I do is I make sure I get paid for my time. I make sure that people respect my presence, because when I say I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up. I'm going to bring my A game, 100%. I don't care what I went through that day, the day before, weeks leading up to it. You get what I advertised and more, if not more. I can definitely back that. So, yeah, I want to make sure that I teach anybody coming up underneath me, and eventually there will, after I build this platform. I'm still in the works of building. It's like Noah's Ark. I'm building it. We'll all be able to sell on it one day to higher lands, right? To dry land.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping, that everything comes together and I'm able to travel the world and, locate these poets, these artists that need to be heard, and teach them to make a living off of what God gave them, their God-given talents. Because we all have a God-given talent, whether we recognize it or not. If you don't recognize it, you lose it.
Man, tell me, do you have a process, or if somebody's looking for their God-given talent, do you have something that you do or tell people to do to uncover what that is?
I don't tell them anything, but if you have a talent and I notice it, I'll sit down and talk with you. I have a young man right now. He goes by B Nails. He's a young rapper from around here, but also had the pleasure of knowing him growing up on Vernon Street. He was my cousin's age. They all got into rap and whatnot, but he still does it actively. But he also is writing a book, and that's what piqued my interest. Is how I got started was everybody was rapping. So I said, I have to separate myself from that. So I chose poetry. People laughed at me, which I'm cool with. He's in the midst of his scene now. It's years later, and this is his city now. He's young. He's at that age. He's rapping, but I want him to see that if you don't invest in yourself on a business aspect, it doesn't matter how great of a talent you are. So he's writing a an anime book. I didn't know this about him. This is about building relationships, right?
Yeah.
I've come to find out he's into anime, and he has this whole book. Like, he has a dictionary with the characters and the different language throughout the book that's able to be coupled with. But and I just thought, I'm like, man, he thought all that. He showed me it. It's all in this notebook, and it just reminded me of when I was getting started, like how raw it was. It was just like, and I just can't. Sometimes I can't believe, what I've been able to accomplish since those days of just having those just papers in my hand. And I just wanted to. I sat down with him a few times. And I told him how important it was for him to start investing in this. I know you like to rap and stuff, but this can take you somewhere. You know what I mean? Not saying rap won't, but I see this taking you somewhere. And so I told him, I said, every day, write. I don't care what it is. Add something to it every day. Just write. Get into the rhythm of just writing. I write everything down, from what I do, what I got to spend money on, my checklist. As you can see, there's boards behind me. Everywhere, if you look around, I'm really true to that. And since I see he has that talent for writing, and I read one of his chapters, I said, man, keep going. Keep writing every day. I don't care if everything's terrible and shit's falling down. Excuse my language. Things are falling down. Write, for God's sakes. Nothing else it couldn't get worse than this. That's how I felt. Can't get worse. I said, well, I can't do anything. I'm gonna write. And who knows I mean, I'm not where I want to be now, because I have to get to the rest of the world, but I definitely come far from those steps. And he could do the same, and he could go far and beyond that. So what I tell any young artist, or any artist, not just young, anybody that has a talent, you have to cultivate it. It's a process. You're going to be somebody different at the end of this, and you're going to love who you become, because if you do the discipline every day, discipline, and you stay on yourself and you remove yourself from certain situations, you'll grow. And people will see that, but more importantly, you'll see that and you'll want to cultivate that. So that's what I'd say to anybody. And I do say that even on my lives, whatever, you got to cultivate that process, man. And you got to learn to love the things you don't want to do. I get up every day and do things I don't want to do. That process, that little present was given to me a while ago, and I stuck with it. That you got to stay on your grind. Some people call it the grind. Some people call it a process. Whatever you call it, stay on it, and block everybody out that's saying, "Oh, that it can't be done." 'Cause anything can be done. You're sitting in front of me. I'm sure you got your story, and any new adventures or any business ventures we go on, it's possible, completely possible. It's just, are you willing to go through the process? It's not going to be overnight. A lot of us, I think, believe that you see these people on TV. I've always known from a kid, I always read biographies. I still love biographies, but I would read about all the greats, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, you know what I mean? All the Michaels, Mike Tyson, Tupac's, anybody that was great, that I felt like was great, and I was introduced to, I would study that. Bruce Lee, I love Bruce Lee. I love his quotes. I just love his life, period. He just has a lot of knowledge to give. So I would also recommend anybody doing research and seeing what other people have gone through, because those guys weren't considered what they were until they went through the process. They gained that momentum. So, and I understand that completely now. And it wasn't something that I could put together completely back in the day. I just knew I had to do things that I didn't always want to do. I had to show up, and I had to be the one on me. Couldn't have like a manager or somebody. I had to be the one to say, "Yo, you got to get up at 4:30 today. You got to hit that road today. You got to take care of your business. If don't nobody else tell me, it ain't going to get done. I mean, if I don't do it myself, nobody else is going to care if I get it done or not." So I would say focus on you and what you got going on. And anybody that's willing to help you in any way, kind words, if they want to help you financially, if they want to give you the wisdom that they've gained over the years, you got to be humble and accept it. You know what I mean? Because not everybody's willing to help you on your journey, and it's not their obligation.
Man,
Sorry, that was a lot. My bad,
dude,
bro.
no. This last, like that last 3 minutes, man, I'm just like, I'm fully bought in. Everything you're saying, I'm totally resonating with, and it's totally true. It's so good. All these questions are like flowing through my brain right now, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta ask you, let's expand on that, but you're just going and you're in the flow, and I love it. And you're right. I don't know if you've ever read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, but in the book he has this thing, what he talks about is resistance, and it's like this daily act of overcoming this resistance, the resistance to not get out of bed, the resistance to not do the thing that you don't want to do. It's like, but like you said, no one else is going to do it for you, and your life has to matter to you. You have to matter to you. You have to realize that your life is the most important life that there is to yourself, right? It 100% is the most important life. And you can sit back and just, float through life. And if that's what you want, fine. But if you want something more, if you want something bigger, you have to step out and you have to do the things that are disciplined. You have to do the hard things. So I love that message. Now, you seem like you support, man. I love the support that you're giving this young guy and others. And how can somebody who maybe feels alone in the process, feels alone in their art, feels alone in their work, how can they maybe find supporters like you and others to help them out? Because, even though you have to do the work yourself, there are people out there that can support you, like you said, maybe financially and kind words. In your opinion, what's your advice on surrounding yourself with those types of people?
Get lost in the work, and they'll come to you. Everybody the way that I ran into you guys is a cool story. I'm lost in the work. I'm sitting in Starbucks. I got my computer out. I got my setup just like it is actually right now.
Mm.
And I'm just working. Not every day is a movement day. Not every day is motion. You're not getting paid every day when you're an entrepreneur, and we know this. Um, but I don't really care about the money as much as I do about the hustle, because the hustle brings the money. So I'm sitting at the table, reaching out to different contacts and trying to book things. And I look out the corner of my eye and I see this BMW pull up out front of Starbucks, and I see this lady pop out, and there's another lady like kind of like not too far behind her, and I just remember her walking into Starbucks, taking her time, opening the door for the lady behind her, coming right in, setting up her computer, and just getting just like I do every day. And you'll notice it. you know, if you do it yourself, you're gonna notice it that much more. So I'm
Mm.
like, I sat back and I was like, all right, I see people all the time come in and out, but I just the way she was moving, it's an energy thing.
Yeah.
So she sits down and she gets right into it. No waste. She didn't even get no coffee, bro. I didn't know the story, nothing. So boom, I'm interested. And I hear a little, I'm being nosy. I hear a little bit of conversation. And she mentions, she's an author, presentation, da, 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 da. And I hear these things and I'm like, you got to introduce yourself. So I was like hesitant at first as far as when to jump. I didn't want to interrupt her. But I definitely, I waited for the right moment. I waited for her to get off the phone, and I went over, introduced myself. I said, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Jules Davenport, yada yada yada. This is what I do. I just noticed you over here." And then she immediately we just start having a conversation. Lori Barkman is who I'm talking
Yep.
about, and she just starts giving me advice, letting me know what she was doing at that time. And I was just like, a lot of people would be like, "Man, go ahead, get away from me." You know what I mean? Like, I'm busy. She never gave me that energy. She's awesome. So, and that was just off of introduction. So she's like, "Well, here's my card. If you ever have any questions or you wanna further this conversation, we can just set up a time with me." And little did I know, she just was fresh off of a presentation. So that's what it was. She had that vibe. She must have killed it. And she just had that vibe, that energy. I know what it is because if you know, you know. So I felt that vibe and I was like, I gotta introduce myself, if for nothing else, just to see what this lady's into. You know what I mean? It doesn't hurt. And she ended up being really cool. She's an author. I did buy her book immediately, but she's like, I'm from Pittsburgh. And I just happened to stop here. You get what I said? I just happened to stop here, right? She happened to stop there, and I just happened to be there. You know what I mean? But I didn't happen to be there because I'm there all the time, and I'm there a lot of places all the time, working, process. So if I didn't believe in myself on them days, there's nothing's working. I won't ever meet anybody that can take me in any other direction. So what she did was we stayed in contact. I bought her book, and I've been watching her videos. She said had nothing but great things to say about you guys. She said, I know a couple of guys that I want to hook you up with. She was just like immediately productive, and she's like, her mind is already gone. And I just respected it so much. So we ended up I ended up connecting like a week or two later. She ended up keeping her word, connecting me with Nick, and then it transformed into us being here today. And I just like to shout out Lloyd Barkman. I really appreciate you for taking the time to acknowledge me and take your time to give me any advice and connect me. So I didn't want to let this go before I
Yeah,
got a
no,
chance to thank
no,
her.
man. And I tell you what, Lori Barkman is such a wonderful human being, and I agree with you. Like the energy that she puts off is, like you said, when you know it, you know it. And you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's got that. She's
She
such
got
an
it.
incredible human being. All right, I have 3 more questions that I want to ask, and
Okay.
then we can start wrapping things up here. But maybe it leads into 4 questions. I don't know. We'll see. All right, the first the first one is what advice do you have around people who have a vision? They have this idea maybe that they want to do something like poetry or maybe art or rapping, or maybe it's a business. Like, what advice do you have those people who feel like stuck kind of in that idea phase of, oh, I have a vision but I don't know what to do with it? What advice do you have for them?
That's a great question, and I think the best way to answer that is this. I would recommend that they write everything out, everything down to the detail. I think we mentioned that a little earlier. All the details. If you don't know, if you don't know what you want for real, then you can't achieve it. So usually, whatever your vision is, it's a huge vision, but it needs to be broken down into bacon bits. And you need, and I'll say this again, you have to understand that it's a process, and even short or long, it's a process. So you got to understand that if it's a process, you got to be working every day. I don't care if you work 12-hour days, before or after work, even during work. You need to be doing whatever it takes, whatever you can do with the time that you have. Your time is essential. You have to respect time, and you have to know it's going to pass whether you're doing these things or not. So those days you're laying in that bed and you could be writing, or you could be emailing, or you could be calling, or you could be knocking on doors, or you could be introducing yourself, or you could be in the coffee shop and making sure anybody that come in that door, maybe you have to be willing to do what the average person is unwilling to do. If you want to be extraordinary, if you want to be exceptional, this takes superhuman work ethic, and only people that get it. And you have to do this. You can be as talented as you want. You have to be knowledgeable of the business that you're stepping into, the money side, guys. And you are as entertaining as you are. You need to let them know that you can handle your business as well. You can handle your contracts. You can handle the numbers. You can handle your business, because you're going to get to that if you're talented. But I say don't wait. Get yourself financially literate, because in every field you have to have that. But you also have to simultaneously sharpen your steel. You have to always be working, and I can't tell you how to do that. The way that I do it is I get up every day, I work out, I write, I do my videos, I practice my discipline. I go to my coffee shops. I made every coffee shop my office. I can go anywhere in the country and have an office because they have Wi-Fi and it's free. And if you go to Starbucks and you have the app, you can keep getting free refills. So you can sit there all day and make that your office. You have to find your space, and you're going to have to get rid of all distractions. All distractions. It's going to take that. So I'd say you have to find your process. And then once you find your process, you have to work harder than you ever worked in your life on the worst days of your life, as well as the best days of your life. So that's the advice I'd give.
Man, that's powerful wisdom. Powerful wisdom you're sharing, man. And that's what it comes down to. It's like taking those actions daily, no matter what.
No matter what.
Such a hard thing to do, but so important. And if you want to get to that next level, if you want to stand out, if you want to be more than average, that's what it takes. And I think it goes back to, it just goes back to realizing that your life matters. Like, you matter so much, and like that's what it comes down to. All right, so next question is, where can people go to find out a little bit more about you and what you're doing? Well, obviously we'll link it all in the show notes, but maybe you can just verbalize it here, and then I'll ask my final question.
Okay. Well, you can Google me under Jules Davenport, and my information should pop up. I do have a website. It's under construction, www.imjules.com, which usually everything's on. You can purchase books. You can find out about me. You can see the different engagements that I'm into. You can book me. I've been utilizing TikTok heavily lately, and it's been very successful. I'm on TikTok right now, actually. I'm on
Nice.
live.
There we go.
So
I love it. Yeah.
I get a lot of support from TikTok. So just to add to that, the question that you asked, I want to add to that answer is, utilize social media platforms. Utilize them. Like TikTok is perfect. Perfect. You can get your message out there, and it's not just restricted to your area. Utilize and take it serious. Your biographies, your links, everything. Look at others. Look at other artists. But you can find out more about me through Google, or you can check me out on my social media. My TikTok under IME Vision, Facebook Jules Davenport, TikTok author Jules Davenport, and I'll send you whatever links.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate that so much. Okay, this is my final question that I ask every single one of our guests, and I
Okay.
love the answer. All right, so here it goes. You pass away, and all the information that you put out, the books, podcasts, social media, everything disappears, but you can leave the world with a single piece of advice. What would it be?
That's a
Take
great
your time.
question. Everything's gone, and
Everything's
only my
gone.
word stands.
Only your word stands.
Stay inspired. It's going to be hard. Stay inspired. It's going to be rough. Stay inspired. Don't give up. Stay inspired. Find inspiration. Seek inspiration like you seek knowledge. Keep educating yourself.
Yeah, man.
Because you can be nothing, and you can turn into something, whatever you want to be. Like Nick said, that's all could be found in a book. So do
Yep.
your research. Stay inspired, though, is the words I leave.
That's beautiful, man. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I knew I would. Like, getting to know you has been amazing. I can't wait for our relationship to continue after this. This has been so much fun. And yeah, man, that advice of stay inspired, stay in possibility, like you said it in this podcast. Anything you want is possible. You just have to be willing to stick to it. So, man, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on. I enjoyed this conversation. I can't wait to have many more with you over the coming months, years, whatever it is. But yeah, thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys so much. Tell Nick I said hello. I wish him the best on his journey as well. You as well in your journey. And I'm only one email, one call, one click
Yes,
away.
sir.